Peggy 18.
So around, August, September of 2011, I started researching this and trying to create this Edward character as a pirate, and we were deciding which way to go with him. And I decided very early on that he would be from whatever part of England we found our best actor. And so we found you, and that allowed, I hope, that allowed you to, when you came here to be Edward Kenway, that gave you a lot of free rein to create the character in a way that you wanted, with some stipulations. But what was that process, maybe through reading the script and doing some research?
I think when I originally auditioned, I did a northern accent, which was a very bad version of Ralph's accent, and then I think when we got here, we all decided that he should be from Wales, where I'm from, and that just sort of opened up the whole world, and the fact that Edward is someone who moved away from home at an early age, and lived in England and then has travelled. And myself, I left Wales when I was 19, so my accent, and I lived in England for a long time, so it's kind of similar in that way, and kind of trying to marry him with me in a way, but then adding lots of other different elements and herbs and spices, so to speak,
yeah.
if you were making a broth.
It's difficult when you're playing if you're playing a character that people are going to be playing, isn't it? Because you kind of have to. I don't know. I guess it is. I don't know. I mean, you're probably the person to ask about this. But if you're writing for a character which is the main character of a game, it must be surely different from all the other characters that surround him, because you want the games player to identify the most with that character. Obviously,
it's a huge question in the industry right now. Is how much of a character is player authored versus how much is authored in advance, and I don't know that there's an answer to that, but we experiment a lot to see if we can push the boundaries of that.
I think that's what's great about the script, the arc of the journey that Edward goes on, and the fact that he's a very different person from when we meet him to where we finish off with him, and it's just interesting. And obviously we jump around in the order of scenes and the way we shoot things. So sometimes it's like, well, what area is he now? What kind of headspace is he? What type of person has he become at this point? And then you're jumping to years before, where he's this carefree sort of easygoing drunken guy who's out for a quick buck, and then and then trying to sort of match that to a scene you're doing later where he's grown up a little bit more, But I think that's the one great thing about this character, and what's really interesting about playing that is that arc, and there's so many different levels to him,
Yeah. It's a team effort as well. Obviously, it's a team effort, but there's a lot of back and forth in all the scenes between you and us and Kama, and about exactly where to pitch it and stuff. That's the joy of the job, really, is that it's a kind of everybody, because you bring a whole wealth of knowledge that we don't have, as does Kama, and it's about piecing it all together and finding something you think is right for that particular moment or whatever.
I think from our point of view, it is slightly more there's always an element of, whenever you're filming a television show or a film, you'll film out a sequence to a certain extent, but I think this is a more fragmented way of working than normal, because if this was a movie, we'd film it over 3 months, but it's over a much bigger period, right, where we do a certain amount of shooting, that's worked on, and then we come back and do some more. So.
And also we would have read the whole script. If it was a movie.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
So we often don't know where the hell we are when we come in.
So it is a more fragmented job than normal, yeah.
Yeah, I think games are the one industry where the writer can't sort of just hand something off and leave. We're always there iterating. So one of my jobs was to give these guys a plausible backstory, plausible history, plausible motivations, So I did my part for the better part of a year, but then I hand this off to you guys, and I cast Blackbeard and Charles Vane, who are based on historical figures. What was the process for you for giving these guys a robust kind of life, I guess?
The research that I started to do once kind of found out about the guy and found out that he was a real character, ended up being quite extensive in a way, and I'd love to say that that's because of my dedication to my craft, but it's actually almost the opposite. I ended up doing a lot of research because I wanted to find out if I had to do an accent, and couldn't find out through whatever research we did. We looked into it with Charles Vane, and couldn't find out anything about his past, anything about his childhood, anything about what had happened before. There's plenty documented about what kind of a pirate he was: crass, aggressive, violent, over-the-top lunatic, essentially. But couldn't really find out where that had come from, and ended up finding a lot about him, about the fact that he was mistrusted by his own type more than almost any other pirate. There's a great story about him being marooned on an island when he's been his crew have mutinied against him, and he's marooned on an island, and a ship comes by and stops at the island, and basically the captain looks over and goes, "You're Charles Vane. Walk off. You're not coming on my boat because you'll get my lot to mutiny as well." And I think that's kind of the kernel of him, is that he's just a bad one. He's a wrong one, right through. It's all about him, and he's really bitter, and that's got to come from somewhere. And I'm saying it, all that research comes from the laziness of finding out whether I could do it in a Yorkshire accent. So couldn't find out any evidence that he was from anywhere. So I decided he was from Whitby, which is a famous smuggling port in the north of Yorkshire. And that kind of got me into the character, researching him, and got me into this idea of these stories of how wrong and how bad he was. And then we talked and created some backstory with him, and this idea of the alcoholic dad who's always going about how he's going to get a privateer's license and all this kind of thing, and just this idea of this angry young man with this useless pisshead dad. Got a great line. What is it? And maybe it's just because you don't have the stones to live with no regrets. That's what he's about. He's all about living with no regrets. If you have the capacity to regret anything you've done, you are nothing. So it's just that thing of never looking back, never thinking, just acting on instincts, and that's what it's about. And I think that kind of came through the research in a way, but kind of by accident through my laziness in a way.
Is he sociopathic, or what they would call now sociopathic? So if he has no,
I think in a way,
care about the consequences of his actions.
Yeah, I think there's genuinely psychopathic traits to him, because there is no empathy, there's no thought of anybody but himself. But he's not actually manipulative and calculating like a psychopath. Psychopaths come in many different forms, but I don't think he is a psychopath because he doesn't have the manipulative edge to him. He's just too.
He just acts
he's too
to moment.
Instinctive. It's an amygdala problem. The fight and flight thing. I think that's set wrong within the character. So it's just always fight.
It's always fight.
Yeah, there is no flight. It's just it's always forward. And that's the beauty of playing a character like that. It's kind of like primal scream therapy, because you spend the whole day going "Wah!" at people, and at the end of the day you kind of feel really calm. You go have a pint at the end of the day's working and you just really chill because you've just got it all out. We're going "Wah!" at people all the time. It's great.